A controversial bill in the General Assembly could reshape beaches along North Carolina's coast.
That bill would repeal the decades-old ban on hard structures like seawalls and groins, which are built to battle erosion. WECT's Mackenzie Bruns is digging deeper into Senate Bill 1009 tonight. Mackenzie, you talked to both sides. What do they have to say?
Well, John, people who want the ban to remain in place say those kinds of hard structures do not stop erosion. They just shift it to another place. But others say those seawalls protect homes, roads, utilities, and public beaches.
Erosion is an issue every beach town faces. Take a look at this video from last year. After king tides and storms, it looks like the ocean took a big bite out of Ocean Isle Beach. Wrightsville Beach suffered significant erosion last year, too, after offshore storms and a nor'easter. Some lawmakers in Raleigh drafted Senate Bill 1009. They say by lifting the ban on hard structures like seawalls and jetties, it would better protect the coastline. Senator Bob Brinson of Craven County is one of the bill's sponsors. He says in part, quote, "A policy that made sense 40 years ago should not be immune from review. Erosion rates have increased. The number of threatened structures has grown." Critics say the bill does anything but protect the coastline.
If you start building these hard structures, which we haven't even covered the cost and how it affects our communities in terms of cost and labor intensiveness, but there's always going to be a winner and a loser in this scenario.
Jessica Clark of the Surfrider Foundation explained that building a structure might protect homes nearby, but it would push the current further down the coast, possibly putting other communities at risk.
People who happen to have those houses behind the structure are in great shape, and everyone else is going to lose. It just passes the problem on to everyone else.
As each wave rolls in, the debate over whether to allow more seawalls will grow louder in the battle to protect North Carolina's shoreline.
The bill has made it through one committee and is sitting right now waiting to be heard in a Senate Budget Committee.
Okay, Mackenzie, you heard, have you talked to any local lawmakers about the bill?
I actually have, John. New Hanover County Representative Deb Butler sent me a statement about Senate Bill 1009. She is against it. I've also reached out to Senator Michael Lee, but had not heard back yet. You can read Representative Butler's statement right now on the WECT News app.
Okay, Mackenzie Bruns, appreciate the update. Thanks.